High upon the jagged cliffs, battered by the relentless waves of Crete, stood the world's greatest and darkest marvel of engineering. This was the Labyrinth, a structure built by Daedalus, the most brilliant mind of the ancient world, where those who entered lost their way, and those who remained outside lost their minds. King Minos, fearing the intellect of this great master, had imprisoned Daedalus and his only son, Icarus, at the very heart of this chaos he had created. The years spent within the damp walls of the labyrinth had stolen Icarus's childhood, leaving behind only two souls starving for freedom. Daedalus knew that Minos controlled the seas with his fleet and the land with his ruthless armies. However, when he looked up, the infinite blue he saw was the only realm of freedom upon which no tyrant had yet pressed his seal. For months, Daedalus painstakingly gathered the feathers shed by gulls, eagles, and birds of prey that perched on the highest ramparts of the labyrinth. This was not merely an escape plan. It was a silent war declared against gravity and destiny. He bound each feather with the precision of a surgeon using linen threads. He reinforced the skeleton of these wings with yellow beeswax, the gift of sacred bees, which appeared resistant to both fire and cold. As Icarus watched his father's miraculous work, he could not have imagined that these colossal white wings, taking shape between those fingers, would one day become his own headstone. When the wings were complete, Daedalus placed this heavy burden upon his son's shoulders. The greatest gift and the most terrifying curse a father could bestow upon his child now rested there. He gripped his son tightly and whispered into his ear history's most mournful and ancient warning. He urged him to follow the safe middle path, cautioning him to approach neither the dampness of the sea nor the fire of the sun. This was not just a technical instruction. It was a life lesson on knowing one's limits as a mortal. At that second of farewell on the tower's summit, amidst the howling wind, they both cast themselves into the vast void. The initial fear of falling, felt in those first few seconds, was replaced by a divine weightlessness as the wings embraced the air. With every flap of his wings, Icarus felt the heavy chains of gravity snapping one by one. Below, fishermen on the islands of Samos and Delos dropped their nets to gaze at the sky. Farmers in the fields let their plows fall from their hands. To them, these two figures soaring through the heavens could not be mortal. They had to be winged gods descended from the peak of Olympus. As Icarus rose, his childish curiosity gave way to a divine intoxication and a wild rebellion against authority. His father's cautious, middle-path advice now sounded like the clanking of a slave's chains. Why should there be limits? Why not touch the source of light, the truth itself? Icarus strayed from his father's path and the boundaries of rational thought. This was not merely a deviation from a route. It was a cry hurled at the heavens by a humanity condemned to crawl for thousands of years. He began a vertical ascent. Piercing through layers of clouds, he left behind the freezing cold of the atmosphere and soared toward the scorching splendor of Helios's golden chariot. As he drew closer to the sun, warm, golden-yellow droplets began to trickle down his shoulders. The wax was perspiring. Feathers were coming loose one by one, falling into the embrace of the wind. Icarus flapped his arms frantically, but the air was no longer a surface he could cling to. In that final second, as he locked eyes with the heart of the sun, there was neither regret nor fear. There was only the burning and sacred ecstasy of having succeeded, of having touched the impossible. Like a star gliding from the heavens, he plummeted and struck the deep blue waters of the Aegean like a spear. When Daedalus looked back, he saw nothing in that azure infinity but a few white feathers floating on the surface. The sea embraced Icarus's body like a silent womb, and from that day forward, those waters were known as the Icarian Sea. The world would always remember him as the boy who did not listen to his father and fell. Yet, Icarus was the first soul to choose absolute freedom at the cost of death, rather than aging in a comfortable state of bondage. He was not a victim dashed upon the earth. He was a conqueror who showed a humanity forced to crawl for millennia that it was possible to embrace the sun. His story is not one of a comfortable slavery, but of a magnificent collapse. For to some, flying like a god for a single second is far more precious than crawling like a human for an entire lifetime. And thus was Icarus sent to his death.